This is Cogitations with Carl Hartman, minister at Main Street Church of Christ in Lockney.
Good morning. I hope that this Sunday morning is off to a wonderful start for you, and I'm glad that you have tuned that dial to 106.1, the Flip FM, to join me for another episode of Cogitations. This morning, I want to kind of delve into something. It might be a little bit more like a science class than a Bible class, but of course, our great God has created the things in which science seeks to understand. And the reason I want to do this, and I actually looked at this Sunday morning in our Bible class, because I've just seen a lot of things on social media dealing with the Big Bang and evolution kind of being pushed out there on social media. And I've looked at several things where Christians have posted and Christian organizations have posted things showing scientific evidence to the contrary of what the Big Bang theory might say or the evolution theory might say. And oddly enough, if you ever look at those and start looking at the comments, I like the fact that the Christian folks in the comments are just putting forth information, but it seems their opposition is always just posting stuff like, well, you're just stupid and you're ignorant and you're not educated, but not actually putting forth any data. And I have found in my own personal discussions with individuals, and I've even talked to people that have PhDs in various disciplines of science, that they don't even really know what these theories state. They only know what is in a textbook. I've taught in private education over the years and have talked even with science teachers in elementary, middle school, high school, and really their scope of knowledge of science doesn't extend beyond what's printed in the textbooks. And I am here to tell you the textbooks don't tell you the whole story. I got several scientific textbooks on my bookshelf in my office, and I was surprised, as even looking through a few different biology textbooks, how many of them don't even tell you the laws of biogenesis. So I wanted to spend our time today, and if I take too long, it'll bleed over into next Sunday's program as well, to talk a little bit about these. And now, the first thing to understand when you're addressing this, because someone may come at you and start talking the Big Bang Theory and evolution and bouncing between them. These are two separate theories, and you need to address them as two separate theories. And just understanding in science, you have a hypothesis, a theory, a fact, or a law, and a fact. A hypothesis is, I loved a website. It's a chemistry website. It's not a religious website at all. But the lady was defining these terms, and she said, hypothesis is just a best guess. Well, I guess this is how that happened. I guess this is why this is this way. She said a theory is just a well-accepted best guess. Hey, your guess sounds pretty good, you know. I think I'll go along with your guess. And you get a couple of scientists that all support your guess, your hypothesis, and it becomes a theory. But a theory is still just a best guess. And now a hypothesis or a theory only stands as long as it's not refuted by a law, or even more so, a fact, an unrefutable fact. Because there are laws that had been stated as laws in the past that have been refuted. So you want to base as much as possible on a fact. So with that said, understand that the Big Bang Theory is a guess on how the universe got here, and the evolutionary theory is a guess on how life got here in the physical universe that was created by the Big Bang. I brought a science book with me here to the radio station to record today. It's Physical Science for Progress. Pella and Wood are the editors of this science book. It's not a Christian science book. It is one that would be used in classrooms and so forth. And just to give you the date, this was 1964 was the last copyright of this textbook. So it's a little bit of an older textbook, but all these theories were there and existed at the time of the writing of this textbook. And there's more than the Big Bang Theory out there for the origin of our solar system, the origin of the universe. But the section where this textbook begins to look at the origin of our solar system, this is the statement they open the section with. And I got to give these guys credit for just telling it how it is. How to consider the theories. Study this section carefully. Try to fit the facts you know into each belief or theory. None of the theories stated here gives us much of an explanation of the origin of the solar system. The origin of the solar system cannot be demonstrated. You can probably think of a better explanation than any given here. Every belief or theory must at least fit the facts we have. So we have to give consideration, as they said, to the facts. And I love how they said, you could probably come up with a better theory than what's in this science book. They know that the theories that are currently out there, and particularly the most accepted one, that Big Bang Theory, it doesn't stand the test of facts. It doesn't stand the test of facts. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, and how we can't even demonstrate. None of us were there at the beginning. Romans chapter 1, I want to sneak a little Bible verse in here. Romans chapter 1, and this is why personally, and I think it's good for all Christians to contemplate science. I look at science and history and anthropology and linguistics. I look at a lot of things when I study the Bible because the Bible touches all of those things. All of the events that took place in Scripture happened throughout the history of the world. You got to look at history and anthropology. They spoke the languages in which they spoke. They wrote in the languages in which was their common language of the time. You have to bring linguistics into it. And then, of course, God created everything. So you got to bring science into it. Romans chapter 1, verse 18. And we're going to read 18 through 20. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. We don't want to suppress truth. We want to uncover truth, reveal truth, support truth. So we got to look at facts. And what do the facts dictate? Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. The very fact that God created the universe, created this solar system that we live in, created this planet we live on, leaves us with no excuse but to believe in God. That said, and what Paul said there in Romans, we need to consider the physical universe, because the physical universe is evidence that God exists. So you got to be able to demonstrate. That was mentioned in that science textbook. I'm opening up now a Popular Science magazine. I once subscribed to Popular Science, and this one's not too old as the case of history and our scientific developments go. This is the April 2002 Popular Science. Okay, my middle child was just being born that year, April, May, June. So he was actually born the next month. So he hasn't quite been born yet, and he's 24 now. So this, I'm sorry, he was born in 2000. My daughter was born in 2002. I messed up there. I'm like, wait, this math isn't working out. No, my daughter was born, he was born in 2000. daughter was born in 2002, and I got another son who was born in 96. But we have here in this popular science magazine, so this isn't like Christian, any kind of Christian magazine, it's popular science. And there's a spread in here where they went to these scientists at a particle accelerator lab that were trying to recreate the Big Bang. And this, the title of the article is Antimatter. And so, first just think about the wisdom of that. They're trying to recreate the Big Bang. Now imagine their theory is correct and they actually succeed. They just killed us all. They just created a universe on top of our universe. I can't imagine the wisdom that would go into that, but I think they just got their government grants. They just hanging out in this lab, doing some experiments, knowing that they're not going to be able to recreate the Big Bang because scientifically the Big Bang doesn't work. And you see that right on the opening cover of this article. It's on page 56, 57 has a 2-page spread for the opening pages of this article, the title page. And right there it says, according to the laws of physics, the world should not exist. Let that sink in for a second. According to the laws of physics, the world should not exist. Now that statement is made with them standing on the premise that their theory, the Big Bang theory, that their theory is correct. And so what they're saying is, seeing that our theory is correct, which it's not, but assuming that it is correct, well, our universe shouldn't exist because our theory violates all the laws of physics. Not just one, all the laws of physics. Well, that right there is your sign to take your theory, ball it up, and throw it in the trash can. It violates all the laws of physics. Now, this particular time period, if you're not familiar with the Big Bang Theory, you probably might remember, if you're an adult, you probably remember when you were in school, the theory of the Big Bang started with a ball of matter about the size of a soccer ball, is what your science book would have said. So a soccer ball size of matter. First of all, just think in your head how all of the entire universe and all of the planets and all of the stars and every particle that's floating around could come from a soccer ball. There's not enough. And they talk about how it's highly compressed and stuff. I don't care how much you compress it. There is not enough mass to account for the universe. It's absurd to begin with. But not only that, and let me just throw this in there. If you picked up a modern science book now, not one from 20 plus years ago, but one in the last decade, it doesn't talk about a ball of matter anymore because they've realized the absurdity of it. Plus, that old thing that all matter is preserved, that matter is never destroyed, that the matter in the universe doesn't become less, but it just gets converted to different states. They've already ruled that out. That doesn't exist anymore. They've realized that matter can be utterly destroyed. As soon as we hit the nuclear age and started splitting atoms, they began to realize matter's not eternal, and that's why they switched up the Big Bang Theory. Now, this article is written when they were dealing with a ball of matter, but they switched up that Big Bang Theory to be a point of energy. So if you opened a earth science book or a physical science book talking about the origin of the universe and talking about the Big Bang Theory, you'll see a statement similar to this. 4.6 billion years ago, our universe was a much simpler place. It was a point of energy no larger than the period at the end of the sentence. And so they gave up on matter and they went to energy. I don't know about you, but even in middle school science, you read the definition of energy, and energy is the ability of matter to do work. Energy is the product of matter, physical substance doing work. Kinetic energy, you need something to move. Heat energy, you need something to burn. or create that energy. Chemical energy, you got to have the physical chemicals to intermix to create that energy. Energy relies on matter. The equation for energy, you would have learned it in middle school and in high school, E equals mc squared. Now the m there is not matter, the m there is mass. But what's the definition of matter? The definition of matter is anything that has mass and takes up space. Well, anything that has mass takes up space. So in order to have mass, you have to have matter. So for the same reason they abandoned the soccer ball of matter, they need to abandon the point of energy because you still would have had to have matter to create that energy. I had an astrophysicist try to argue that with me and talk about photon particles that don't rely on matter, and he kept talking particle, 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 particle. Look up the definition of particle. Particle is a tiniest little piece of matter. All right, and even when I told him, he kept saying particle. I never said particle, and his wife, who was also a multi-PhD holder, turned to him and said, honey, you've been saying it over and over again. Particle. So we have this model. I'm going to go back to this article here. And so they're in this particle accelerating lab. They're doing these experiments, and they want to recreate the Big Bang in their utter stupidity. So they want to annihilate all of us in doing this. But they ultimately come to this understanding because what they understand in their theory is that when that matter initially exploded, there was equal parts of matter and antimatter, and matter and antimatter annihilate each other. So I'm going to read now. Herein lies the problem. If matter and antimatter destroy each other, and there were equal amounts of the two in the earliest moments of the universe, then everything should have been promptly annihilated, leaving behind only light. And that light would have just been a flash and gone, because there had been nothing continuous or perpetuating that light. So they say in this article themselves, our theory doesn't work, because the matter and the antimatter would have annihilated each other. So the next three words in the article are very important. But what if? We have just left the entire realm of scientific reasoning. We have just left the entire scientific method. We have gone into fantasy land. What if? And what they go on to say is, what if immediately after the Big Bang? Now, this is the explosion of matter, which then would have had the collision of matter and antimatter, which would have created a whole other bang. So what if, in this nanosecond of a nanosecond of a nanosecond, what if some of that antimatter, all on its own, just decided to become matter? So you know what? Now we're not even dealing with a soccer ball. We're dealing with some dust off the soccer ball. Some dust off the soccer ball. But it's all hinged on a big old fat what if. What if all the laws of physics didn't exist? What if none of the laws of physics played in what has happened in the creation of our universe? That's absurd. That's not scientific. A little bit later on, talking about how just a little bit, a tiny bit of dust of matter might survive. Potentially, there's another not scientific word, potentially enough to cool and coalesce, eventually bunching into stars and galaxies. Yeah, right. The entire universe was created from some dust particles of matter. That sheer volume doesn't work. They knew their theory didn't work. They knew their theory was based on a big fat what if. And a big fat potentially, possibly, there ain't even a slim chance. And they know that. And that's why the modern Big Bang theory doesn't even use the ball of energy anymore, or the ball of matter anymore. They've gone to a point of energy. But as we've already discussed, you can't have energy without matter. It's part of the equation to calculate energy. We We get windmills, solar panels. We burn fossil fuels. We burn wood. We get kinetic generators. We create all these things to produce energy. You have to have matter to have energy because you have to have mass to have energy. Now, another thing to think about, and if you ever go back and you look at the Big Bang Theory, and since we only got about 8 minutes left, we're probably going to look at evolution next Sunday and that theory and all the problems with that theory. But you look at the history of the Big Bang Theory, and even the history of evolution, we'll talk a little bit more about next Sunday on the program. But you look at that, and it starts with a 10,000-year span, because really 6,000 to 10,000 years is all that we have established for the age of the Earth, the age of our solar system. That's a whole nother, I could spend months going through the data on how young our Earth and solar system really is. We'll look at a few here in a second, but they started with that. But there's so many variables because they violate all the laws of physics that they had to keep expanding the time frame. So from 10,000 years, they jumped to like 20,000 years, they jumped to 50,000 years, they jumped to a couple 100,000 years, and eventually we get to the last bunch of science books I looked at, 4.6 billion years ago. But there's a problem. The longer they keep expanding that timeline, the less it fits with what's actually happening in our universe. They've actually been able to measure the consumption rate of the sun. And so they can estimate how quickly the sun is burning its available fuel to heat the universe. They can back calculate that to see how long it has been doing that. So they estimate it's burnt about 4% of its mass, which only gives us several thousand years. The moon. Most people don't realize this. You can Google it and look it up. The moon is moving approximately 1 inch a year further away from our planet. So the moon is getting a little bit further and further away. Now, 1 inch, that ain't much. The moon changes miles every day because it moves in an eclipse, not in an elliptical pattern, not in a straight circle. So it varies in distance every day as it rotates around the planet, but that orbit around the planet is growing 1 inch on average every year. So let's roll that back, because that means last year it was 1 inch closer. It means 10 years it was 10 inches closer. It means 100 years it was 100 inches closer. It means 1,000 years it was 1,000 inches closer. And so you could sit down and do the math, and let's just go with the strictest Bible timeline, 6,000 years. That's 6,000 inches. That's not very far at all. That's just a football field. Not very far at all. Now let's go 4.6 billion years. That's a lot of inches. That puts the moon roughly 72,000 miles closer to the Earth, about a third of its current distance. Move the moon that much closer to our Earth, and we got this thing called gravity. That's another thing that scientists have a lot of theories about. They don't really know for sure what causes gravity, what's holding the universe together. But the gravity itself would have caused the moon and the Earth to literally rip each other apart. The Earth is slowing down. Look it up. The Earth is slowing down. Now, you're not going to notice it in your lifetime, but it's slowing down. Roughly, the Earth moves at approximately 1,000 miles per hour right now. So you go back 6,000, 10,000 years, nominal. nominal amount of speed difference. Go back 4.6 billion years. The Earth would be spinning so fast we wouldn't have an atmosphere. The Earth would be spinning so fast that your mountains wouldn't be any taller than the thickness of a piece of paper because of the sheer force ripping across the surface because it's spinning so fast. All of your mass would be pulled to the poles because it's spinning so fast. There is a lot of things in our universe, our observable universe, just facts of its existence that limits how old it could possibly be. You know, geologists talk about these layers of the Earth, and these different layers are different time zones. Well, over 30% of the places they've dug these up, the layers are upside down. They're in the exact opposite stack. Not only that, they find fossils of things that are alive today in layers they say is millions of years old. The facts don't add up to support the theories. I encourage you to take time to do research. Take time to arm yourself. Take time to grow in knowledge, because knowledge will give you the power to refute the naysayers. We have a theory. Our theory is God created the universe, that God created the universe in 6 literal 24-hour days. That's our theory. Do the facts support it? Well, there's a lot of mathematicians, particularly within the previous 100 years, that would make that statement. When they look at the laws of physics that govern the universe, and they look at the precision of the mathematics that govern this universe, their statements center on the fact that it took some kind of intelligent design. You had to have a designer behind it. I'm going to leave you with a story about Sir Isaac Newton, that he had a friend who was an atheist, an agnostic at best, who he would have little banters with over the origin of the universe. So Sir Isaac Newton had a model of the universe made. Sorry, the solar system, not the universe, but had a model of the solar system made, much like you'd see in classrooms today with all the planets moving in their positions around the sun. His friend comes over, sees this model laid out on the table, observes it, moves the pieces around. He's amazed. He goes, "You got to tell me, who made this? Who made this precise model of the universe, this precise scaled model of the universe?" And he just looked at him, shrugged his shoulders, said, "Nobody made it. It just magically appeared on my table." So his buddy begins to argue with him from the stance of the design in this, that it's impossible for it to have just spontaneously appeared on its own. Someone would have had to get the raw materials. Someone would have had to craft and shape those raw materials. Someone would have had to position these in the precise scale distances from the sun and had put this together. Finally, Sir Isaac Newton conceded and said, "Yep, you're right. So-and-so was the craftsman that put this together for me. I gave him all the calculations and measurements. I provided the information, and he skillfully put it together. But you look at this puny little teeny model and demand it had to have an intellectual creator. But you look at the solar system in which it models and argue that it just spontaneously came into existence with no planning and with no craftsman." Rumor has it his friend became a believer. Well, I hope today's program has been informative for you and will hopefully equip you a little bit better to be able to bring knowledge to a conversation you might have with an individual in the hopes that they can abandon false theories and come to accept the truth. May God be with you. May God bless you. May God keep you until we're back together again next Sunday morning at 9 a.m. here on Cogitations.
Tune in next Sunday at 9 for another edition of Cogitations with Carl Hartman, minister at Main Street Church of Christ in Lockney.